This Miller philosopher, just because Feanor was correct doesn't mean he was right. And honestly, it actually took me a full minute to unpack this comment from a commenter. Because yes, he definitely noted that I am a Feanor fanboy. That's fair. Yet this comment also opened a door into something deeper. The difference between moral rightness and practical correctness. Most of us instinctively treat being correct as being right, and that they're the same thing, that they're interchangeable, but they're not. Think of phrases like might makes right, or history is written by the victors, or being on the right side of history. Statements like these remind us that morality and outcomes don't always align. Part 1. Why correct and right aren't the same thing. There are two perspectives here. There's the moral perspective, that rightness is judged by ethics, compassion, and the cost of an action. It's the should you have done this question, or the statement, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do something. It is the aspect that many people approach such matters on. The morality of a decision is the ultimate judge, if it should have been ever done or not. And then there's the practical perspective. Correctness is judged by whether the action achieves the intended goal. It's the did it work question. Morals exist, but they're secondary to the actual goals in mind. It more or less falls within the ends justify the means scenario. These goals are often assumed to be moral, but facts are that they are not always moral. Yet, they accomplish the task that the person sets out to do. You see this in business, politics, war, leaders that treat morality as optional or as a PR shield, while the real decisions are driven by goals, deadlines, consequences, and desires. So when the commenter said correct doesn't mean right, they weren't just nitpicking about that. They were actually pointing out a philosophical divide that shapes the entire story of Middle Earth, really, when you think about it. But Feanor is the ultimate example of this. Part 2. Feanor, Tolkien's first moral disruptor. The actions of Feanor show the brilliance in Tolkien's writing. Both hardcore and casual fans tend to assume that Tolkien's stories are moral tales, stories of right and wrong. Even George R.R. Martin, author of Game of Thrones, has said that Tolkien's stories is black and white, good versus evil, where the lines are pretty clear cut. In his view, he feels it's pretty cookie cutter and overall too simplified, in my opinion, of what he's saying. However, Feanor is the first character that gives a flying middle finger to this assumption. He's not Sauron, he's not Morgoth, he's not even a tragic hero like Turin. He's something else. He's a catalyst. Feanor's actions, however destructive, push the entire story of Middle-earth forward. The Valar's well-intentioned sheltering of the elves in Valinor created a kind of spiritual stagnation in Middle-earth. The world wasn't evolving. And yes, I know there's an irony in that peace equals stagnation effect. But, that being said, nothing was changing, and the elves weren't fulfilling their purpose. And then Feanor shows up. His rebellion, his fire, if you will, his refusal to accept the status quo, these ignite the events that shape the first, second, and pretty much honestly the third ages. Honestly, the entire arc of Middle-earth. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can argue that for Uru-Ilúvatar's long-term design to unfold, that there had to be conflict, sorrow, and loss. Think about it. Gollum's betrayal, the exile of Noldor, the fall of Númenor, all of it. I don't particularly like this plan, but there it is. And Feanor is the first one who forces that plan into motion. Part 3. The Aqualonde problem. Correct, but not right. So let's talk about the moment that everyone argues about this, the kinslaying at Alqualande. Morally, indefensible, no questions asked. There's no way to spin that as right, even from me. But practically, from Feanor's perspective, it was the only path left. See, here's the situation. Morgoth has a massive head start. The Valar have refused to help Feanor and the Noldor. The Vanir have also refused to help Feanor and the Noldor. And the Teleri are the ones with the ships. And Feanor's goal was singular: catch the murderer of his father and the thief of his greatest work, ASAP. And it should be noted that Feanor didn't just roll into Alqualande with swords blazing either. He didn't start with violence, surprisingly. He negotiated with the Teleri. He tried persuasion. He tried appealing to kinship, for God's sakes. But the Teleri not only refused him, they tried to push him back towards the Valar, which, coming from the we stay in our own lane Teleri, is actually saying something. In other words, the Teleri weren't just unhelpful, they became an obstacle. And Feanor, who was already mad by this point, made the practical but arguably military decision to take the ships. Again, not morally right, but practically correct for achieving his goals. And those goals did not include killing elves, but it was an unintended outcome in terms of achieving his ultimate goal of avenging his father and getting back to Silmarils. And the proof is in the outcome. He did catch up with Morgoth in Middle-earth. So there you are. And this is the heart of the correct or right argument. Part 4. The Uru perspective. The paradox goes all the way up. So there's another angle to the problem that I already hinted at as well, and that's Uru Uyuvatar's perspective, and how that may have affected Feanor's actions in a way. Because Uru has a blueprint, a design, a long-term design, a long-term plan of how the world should unfold according to what he wants it to be. And at face value, to me anyway, it doesn't appear that he took into account the moral perspective per se, save that he somehow allows free will to exist in Middle-earth in that world. Yet, it's only to the extent that it still feeds back into the music that him and the Annuar created at the beginning of time. So, from a cosmic perspective, Uru's plan is quote-unquote correct. It achieves the intended outcome. But from a moral perspective, it does allow suffering, conflict, and tragedy on a massive scale, which means this paradox, this correct versus right, isn't just about what Feanor did. It's literally baked into the metaphysics of Tolkien's world. And from my perspective as a reader, and yes, still a fan, it goes all the way to the top. Feanor is just the first character who basically forces us to confront it. So, to the commenter who said correct doesn't mean right, thank you. I hope this video meets your liking, and I honored your request pretty well. It did take me a while to process this because life and just other projects that I'm working on, but it's a powerful distinction to point out, and I appreciate that. And in Feanor's case, it might be the key to understanding why he remains one of Tolkien's most divisive and important characters in the Legendarium. This is the Miller Philosopher. Have a good day.